see if we are going. Okay, we are up. Fantastic. It is on. Just waiting for people to jump on. It looks like we have some people jumping on. Let's make sure all the comments and everything work as they're supposed to. Fantastic. Hello, North Carolina. Excellent. Queens, New York. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Nevada, Michigan. Thank you. Yes, it's a great shirt. I appreciate that. Good evening, everybody. Minnesota. So the great state of Minnesota just banned graduations. That's okay. I heard something about graduations tonight that everyone will want to see pretty soon. I'll have to post the meme, but the meme might be offensive to some, so I have to be careful how I post it because it will challenge belief systems, okay? Manchester, Indiana. Manchester or North Manchester, Indiana. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for jumping on. We are going to have a different kind of setup tonight. There's been a lot of information coming in, tons all day, but also Morley is coming tonight. We worked out tonight, so I'm going to bring him on actually very shortly. But before that, we're going to cover a couple things really quickly and get this thing knocked out with Morley very soon. So, Dr. Jason Dean, Revolution Network, your source for health, freedom, and knowledge. Thank you for being here tonight on a Friday night. I appreciate it. You're all amazing. Welcome to the show. And so a couple things that I'm going to cover tonight before I run and jump and grab Morley. Yes, Morley Robbins will be here tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about anemia as well as many other things because we always dive into different topics. However, I posted earlier today, Mayor DeBlasio telling people that it was going to be illegal to protest in New York City. Now, he didn't say Albany, which is the capital. New York City, just so people know who's not in New York, so many people think that New York City is, or Manhattan is the capital of New York because it's obviously a densely populated city. It is not Albany, New York, which is more northeast of the state is actually the capital. So he didn't say you couldn't protest in Albany. He said he couldn't protest in New York City. So this is the thing. I talked about this, I think, actually last night, maybe the night before, and I ranted about this, obviously, is you have to get up and you have to do something about it, okay? And I'm going to segue into a different topic right after I say this. But first of all, you have to draw a line in the sand at some point as your breaking point, right? How much are you willing to let them push you behind the line in the sand? How much are you willing to accept as an American citizen, right? So when de Blasio says no protesting, he's violating your First Amendment right. So you have a constitutional right to come together as a group to assemble and to voice your opinion on what you believe is right and what you believe is wrong. So anybody who does not align with that they're going against your constitutional rights. So what is the line? At some point, everyone in New York, you're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to do what you need to do. You're going to have to organize. Trust me, they don't have enough to take you down if you have a whole massive group. But even from New York State, you're going to have to come down. You're going to have to go to Albany or New York and New York City, and you're going to have to do something about it. You have to draw a line in the sand because they will continue to push that line back. They will continue to come over it and box you or back you into a corner. That is what they do, okay? They very slowly take away rights and freedoms before you don't even realize that your rights and freedoms are actually gone. So very important, okay? Second of all, I actually spoke to somebody on the phone today. I won't go into who it is. It was helping somebody as a patient. And I said, I actually was dealing with a problem. There was some stress, anxiety, worry, which many of you may be out there actually dealing with. And I'm going to touch on this again another night, not just tonight, because I can go even deeper into this, and Morley's going to be on here in just a couple minutes. But you guys need, especially in really, really rough states like your Ohio's, your Michigans, your New Yorks, your Californias, and many other out there, okay? You have to start creating your plan on what you're going to do. What does that mean? A lot of people are scared right now. A lot of people are in fear. What the president did by giving the choice to the states was completely constitutional, because the states are supposed to dictate their own terms. It is not their state rights. So a lot of you might complain about what California is doing, what New York's doing, what Ohio, Michigan. So either you have to stand up to it and you have to fight back, or you have to decide to take yourself, your family, and move. And I know the first thing people are going to say is, I can't move, everything is here. Well, I get that, but at the end of the day, everyone has a choice. Everyone, you can have your whole family in one spot, but at the end of the day, if somebody comes after you and your family and decides that you're going to live in communism, you're really quickly going to leave all your possessions behind. You're going to go to another place. You might have to go to a different state. So instead of being in fear, being in worry, being in anxiety, what you need to actually do is you need to create a battle plan. What does that battle plan mean? It's almost like when my wife and I were having our daughter, there was a birthing plan, okay? What it meant was we had written up, she wrote up every single thing she wanted to happen and how it wanted to go. Every single situation that could happen. So yes, this is your ideal, but these 3 or 4 things could also happen, and they're not an ideal scenario. But if those 3 or 4 things do happen, what do I do and what am I going to do in those places, okay? So create this battle plan. It's a future battle plan showing what you want to happen, but if it doesn't go your way, what are you going to do? Now, that could be as simply as, I'm going to move from my neighborhood. That might be as simply as, I'm going to take my kid out of school. That might be as simple as changing something that you're doing currently. It could be something very small. It could also be very major. It could be, I'm moving to another state. It could be, I'm moving to another city. It could be I'm moving to another country, quite honestly. But you have to have this, because when you plan this out, I will tell you, one of the things happens, you actually decrease your anxiety, you decrease your worry, because you made a decision. Decisions are very, very powerful in life. There's a whole bunch of gurus out there, self-help people, spirituality, etc. And you know what they all talk about? Decision making. They talk about making a decision on what you have to do. So create what you want to ideally happen, and then have 3 or 4 things on the side that could happen that are not the situation you want. But if those things happen, what do I do? What do we do as a family, right? You have to have that planned out. When you plan all that out, your anxiety, your stress, your fear will all decrease, because you know what you're going to do if it happens. The reason why you're in stress is because, 1, you don't know what the future holds. We all fear if we don't know what the future holds. And 2, you don't have a decision made with your family, with yourself. You don't have a plan, and that is why you can feel so much stress. I will tell you, having a plan, all that stuff somewhat melts away. It doesn't mean you stop watching. It doesn't mean you take your eye off the ball. It just means you know what you're ready to do if it happens. And hey, if it never happens, you're in a best case scenario. Life continues on as it's supposed to be. So have your plan, have your battle plan ready. Figure out what you're going to do, best case scenario and worst case scenarios, and get it under control, okay? I hope that helps. Let me know if that helps. I wanted to bring that to you because I had that conversation today and I thought it was really important. I'm working on bringing Morley in right now. So it's so important to have all that ready to go. And he is going to jump on here in 2 seconds, as long as he is hopefully ready to go. He is ready to go. I hear him. Let me bring him in. Oh, I see a blue Skype.
Got it. Got stereo going here, buddy.
I got your stereo going. I don't have you, though. I have your audio. I'm sure they can all hear your lovely voice.
You can't hear me?
No, we can hear you. I just can't see you. They can hear your lovely voice, I'm sure. I'm sure they'll let you know they can hear your lovely voice. We just can't see you yet. So
all right, hold on here.
You're okay. No worries. We have plenty of time.
Okay.
It's our Friday night chat with Morley Robbins. Oh, here it comes. Oh,
there we go.
There's the star of the show.
Yeah, right. It was fun listening to you talk about planning. I did that for 32 years. And plans are great, but planning is everything.
Absolutely. It completely is. And you know what? I think that's a learning experience over time, because I'm still obviously not perfect at it whatsoever. And we can always sit down and be better at anything, but you can plans change too. I mean, you can alter things. You're constantly working on it. But how is Morley on this Friday night?
He's doing great. Been a good week. Had a real fun presentation yesterday afternoon with several hundred practitioners, dancing on their minds, teaching them about what's really going on.
I love it.
Yeah. And beautiful. I think as people are coping with this, we're kind of coming out of our stupor about COVID-19. When it first happened, I was really alarmed. I was like everyone else. I was like, what the heck's going on? And I really wondered whether this focus of mine was even going to make it. Is it going to withstand the test of this insane world? And what it's really turned into, it's been the perfect platform to expose the insanity of the system, to expose the hypocrisy of the system, to expose the outright sham of education that practitioners get, because it's all about the pathogen, nothing about building up the immune system. And so we're rocking. And what I think is really important, I get that people are still anxious, but what they don't realize is the reason why they're anxious is they have too much iron in their body and they don't have enough copper in their body.
Absolutely. Now, before you dive into that, I have one, and this is a perfect transition. I did not set this up in any way, shape, or form, but the thing you said right from the start is something. Before we dive into that, I want to ask you a question, because I've been banging lately on the medical system. Not obviously there's a lot of great medical doctors out there, but the system in general. And as we dive into tonight, I know obviously we still have a ton of new viewers who are seeing you for the first time, and I want to draw not just on your nutrition experience and the copper and the iron, but I'd also like to go back just a little bit, and you can do this briefly. It doesn't have to be a long dissertation on it necessarily, but give a little background on your hospital administrative background, because my father-in-law was also a hospital administrator for most of his career. And he also now, by the way, is in holistic health. He does everything we do. He's super smart. He's in his mid-70s. He went off of blood pressure medication that he was on for 40 years when he finally realized the truth. And he will sit there and tell you at the table like exactly how a hospital works. They have expenses they have to take care of, and that's why costs get so high, etc. But I would love for you to kind of just give a little background on some of your hospital administration work, on how you end up from there into the world you are now.
Oh, well, when I graduated from college and didn't get into medical school, you got to do something, right? So if you can't be a doctor, you might as well learn how to boss them around.
That's right.
So I went to business school to be a hospital administrator, and it was really interesting. I really focused principally in finance and marketing. And I burned through those courses. Like, is there anything else I can study? And my advisor said, well, why don't you look into planning? That's what changed my life, was strategic planning, and it was amazing, and general systems theory, and never looked back. But I did I was never in charge of a hospital, but I was always in charge of marketing and business development strategy, and always reported to the CEO. And did that for 12 years. It was fascinating. Sat through some very interesting meetings. Probably the most memorable meeting I had was with a physician who I was trying to get to back a particular project, and the guy was he didn't quite see the game plan the way I did. I got so mad I lost my voice, and I had to leave the meeting, and I went home and I swam for 2 hours to get it out of my system. But I've worked from, and then I went into consulting. I did consulting for 20 years, and I've been in hospital settings as small as 8 beds to a system. I worked in his system that had 55 hospitals. So I've seen the whole breadth and depth of hospitals. They're all pretty much wired the same way. They have really good intentions. They're usually the largest employer in most communities. Right. Most people don't know that. Hands down, they're probably the most important employer in any given community. And they attract very smart people who have been gone through very rigorous education. And I was always really kind of bowled over by that when I thought about the education that they had to go through. But I began to question things when I was seeing the same people coming in the hospital. They weren't getting well. It was a turnstile. And that began to raise questions in my mind. I took a vow of integrity many, many years ago, and I really couldn't resolve it. And what really got me into this work was a convergence of events. One was a frozen shoulder that got me to my now wife, Dr. Liz, who was able to correct it in a matter of a couple sessions using classic chiropractic technique, which is fascinating. The release technique was in my mouth. That was sort of an unexpected experience, but it was life-changing because I couldn't lift my hand to being able to lift it up like that. And I did a project for a group of hospitals. At the time, I was living in North Carolina. This was about 11 or 12 years ago. And it was to forecast, it was actually in 2008, it was to forecast healthcare in the year 2025. What was the demand for healthcare going to be? And Jason, every projection was a hockey stick. Every condition was going to take off. It didn't matter whether it was cancer, heart disease, neurodegeneration, diabetes. It was like, and I went, oh my gosh, I can't stay on the sidelines. And that's what really drove me into taking training to become a wellness coach. And then, long story short, ended up being Dr. Liz's Girl Friday for a couple of years, checking people out of the clinic. And I just was reading voraciously. And then that's what really got me to start focusing on minerals and start writing about it. And that's when I birthed the Magnesium Advocacy Group. And then the rest, I guess, as they say, is history. It's been an amazing experience. And I think and I too went through this phase of being very critical of physicians or doctors in general. But I would say I've toned it down. I now realize that they do what they've been trained to do.
Right.
And while we can fault them for some of their actions, they are doing what they were trained to do. And I've refined my criticism that their training is very bad, but they also have the curiosity of a gnat. They don't wonder, why aren't my patients getting better?
I'm sorry. It's not to interrupt, but it blows my mind on it. And this not just because what you see and how you were trained and what you looked at, but even as practitioners now, because you work with patients, I work with a ton of patients, and the insanity that people come in with, and the fact that a medical doctor kept loading up the medications, and you're like, but this isn't hard. This is like you don't even have a complex problem. You're sick because of all the stuff they put you on, and the whole like curiosity of a gnat is so true. Like it's really as simple as going home and Googling a condition and looking at what might herb or whole food or nutrient might actually help that, or oh God forbid, a mineral could actually handle that problem.
Well, and it's also, and again, my clients would say, Morley, you're being a little too hard on the doctors. They didn't learn that in medical school. And I said, you're right. They didn't, but neither did I.
Right.
I went to business school, but I was curious about why is everyone getting so sick? And what is it possible that all of these conditions have a common point of origin? Had they never thought about that? I find that amazing. And so, when I came across the work of Denham Harmon, who was talking about the free radical theory of aging and disease, it's like I died and gone to heaven. I was like, oh my gosh, someone has actually been thinking about this. This goes back to the 50s. But suddenly there was this common point of origin. Suddenly we do have this common understanding about where all these conditions come from, because oxygen is not being managed properly in the human body. And it's being grossly mismanaged. And I don't know, I just find that fascinating that it's not the cornerstone of education. Well, it would kill the business model if they did. That's the dilemma. And so when people don't understand what that means, the free radical theory of aging, when they don't understand that all of our symptoms originate from oxygen not being managed properly, then you will be in fear.
Right.
But when you understand that the reason why we're on this planet, the reason why higher life forms evolved on this planet, the reason why we have, YouTube shows on this planet is because humans can harness oxygen courtesy of copper. And that's taught nowhere except in the training program that I've got. And it's like, I find that fascinating. That if people knew that, if they knew what the cure was, and we spell it differently, CU-RE, so we can see the symbol for copper. If you know the cure, then you're not in fear. How do you spell fear? Fe-AR, so you see the symbol for iron. Iron's the bad guy, folks. And when you don't know that, you're more prone to being in shackles, being anxious. Oh yeah, what are shackles made out of? Oh yeah, they're made out of iron. That's right. So people need to understand that the reason why I keep this focus is to keep it really simple so people understand, where does this anxiety really come from? It comes from within, because you've been eating the standard American diet that is just riddled with sugar and iron, and most people don't know that. The thing that I just learned today, you were asking me, what's the big blockbuster idea? Everybody's trying to get organic food, right?
Right.
Which would mean it would be grown in organic soil, right?
Could be.
Right?
Should be.
Would be a reasonable conclusion, right? Well, I came across a study from Clemson University where guess what the one mineral that's missing in organic soil? Copper. Now here's the catch. Why would there be copper missing in organic soil? Because people use horse manure as a fertilizer to make their soil organic, right?
Right.
What do horses eat? They eat oats and they eat alfalfa. Guess what? Both of them are now GMO.
That's
so there's no copper in oats and alfalfa, and oh my gosh. So now we've got another layer of crisis to deal with, is that organic soil doesn't have copper. OMG. It's like the rat hole just doesn't end. So if you're looking for a blockbuster idea, it's like, now we've got to start asking our farmers at the farmers market, so what are you doing to specifically restore copper status to the soil? Because I can't breathe without it. I can't make energy without it. And it's that basic. And there are very few farmers that know that. And I'll be talking to, I've been invited up to Lancaster, PA, for the family farm days with the Amish community. And they want me to talk about the importance of copper.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And it'll be at the end of July. Really looking forward to that. And it's just, they are champing at the bit to find out what they don't know about minerals. And these are some of the best farmers the two best places for farming, Lancaster, PA, and then California. Those are the two biggest areas of organic farming, and wait till I challenge them with, let's do a mineral test of your soil. See if it even has, because if the copper's not in the soil, it can't get in the plant, it can't get in the animal, and then it can't get in the human. It's just pretty basic stuff here.
It's so basic. Well, we also know, we've talked about this in the past, that we make things as a society, as humans, as complex as humanly possible. We have turned healthcare into the most complex thing, and I will tell you, the truth is always simplistic.
Oh, it absolutely is. And I think the people who are drawn to discussions like this are high IQ. First of all, if you have a computer, you got to have a certain intellect to have a computer or have access to a smartphone or whatever. But people with a high IQ have two defects, genetic defects. We're control freaks, and we love complexity. And so if we get sick, we lose control. That's the first thing that happens when someone who's smart gets sick, gets a chronic condition, they're out of control, and that just feeds their stress. Then they're really anxious about that. And then we've been trained like circus bears to believe that this disease, whatever it is, multiple sclerosis, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, that it's really complicated, and it's not.
Nope.
And oh yeah, they've all got this common point of origin, and that is so disruptive to a high IQ mind, because it's cognitive dissonance that drives them crazy. They're like, "You mean I could have solved this years ago?" Yeah, that's true if you'd known this. And so I've got clients that have been down and out for 20, 30 years,
mm-hmm.
and suddenly within a matter of 20 or 30 weeks, they're back. It's just, that's the exciting part about Mother Nature, is that if you get the right nutrients in the body, and you know this as well as I do, the body knows how to respond. The body knows how to get the pathways to do what they're supposed to do. And it isn't that complicated, but it's made to be complicated.
Absolutely. Now, you sent me over, as you always do, a couple days or a couple hours before we go on, you sent me over a little graphic or picture, an image on something you wanted to chat about today, which I actually found pretty fascinating, and I have to open it up again here while I'm talking to you. But it was regarding, and let me look at it here again. It's a nice big picture of it. Okay, good. So we're going back to the mitochondria, and for everyone who forgot, mitochondria is essentially the workhorse of the engine for our body, which creates ATP. ATP simplistically is energy for the most part, okay? And so we actually, and I am simplifying it for you, but ATP, we make approximately our body weight a day, supposedly, in ATP. So meaning, I tell everyone this, if you are fatigued, if you have no energy or a lack of energy, you are not making ATP. Now, that is not always the solution just to get ATP, quote unquote. It's not necessarily the correct target to go after, but that is your engines of your body not spitting out enough ATP and the energy. And so Morley sent over a little link with two mitochondria, two little engines, one with less oxidative stress, one with more oxidative stress, and one with cell expansion, and then one with cell differentiation. So, Morley, I will let you take over your lovely little seminar tonight on this, because I know you're very excited about it.
Aren't you excited about it?
I saw the picture, and maybe we'll post it up on the thing on the thread after this, because it's actually very easy to understand. But I looked at it and said, "Oh yeah, that makes sense."
Well, this is something I've been researching now for about 3 years, and again, in the spirit of allowing people to have freedom. What my whole focus is, and what the focus of the root cause protocol is to grant people health freedom so they have medical independence. And when you get out from that system, your life changes. And it's really what this whole root cause protocol is all about, is getting people health freedom and learning the basics of how the body works. And where the vast majority of people get tripped up is this thing called anemia. Well, I'm anemic. And
you're going to excite everybody with that word.
Sure, absolutely. So a lot of people that are listening to this either have experienced it or they know someone who has been called anemic. And that means the true definition of anemia is you don't have enough hemoglobin in your blood. And hemoglobin are the proteins that carry the oxygen that our tissue lives on. And oxygen is metabolized in the mitochondria. Really important step that takes place. So a lot of people are told that they are anemic, but what's happened is they've changed the yardstick. From 1860 to 1972, anemia was always the number of hemoglobin in the blood, in some defined unit of blood. Well, now what they've done is they've changed it to ferritin, and ferritin is not representative of what's actually happening in the body. So when someone is told that they are anemic, they are told that they need to take more iron. And back to the training for practitioners, there's a very basic, all too simplistic belief that if you're anemic, it means that you don't have enough iron in your body. I call it the dipstick mentality of medicine. It's like all they're doing is, your iron's low. Well, we're talking about the metabolism of iron is one of the most sophisticated, one of the most complicated aspects of the human body. And they're using a dipstick. And so everyone on this call knows what miles per gallon is. Mm-hmm. And miles per gallon, so dipstick is grade school math. It's too low, it's not high enough. So miles per gallon, though, that's high school math. That involves variables. And we all know that we can take the distance that we drove by the number of gallons that we spent, and we can get miles per gallon and have an appreciation for how efficient is my engine. Am I getting 15 miles to the gallon? Am I getting 25 miles to the gallon? Am I getting 40 miles to the gallon? And the goal, of course, is to get more miles with less gas.
Right.
Well, iron metabolism is the same way. And what very few people know is that there's an iron recycling program in our body. And every day, every 24 hours, we need to come up with 24 milligrams of iron. And we get 1 milligram from our diet. That's it, 1 milligram. And those 25 milligrams of iron every day go to make the next day's batch of 250 billion red blood cells that are needed every 24 hours. It's the most incredible system in the body. And what's important for people to know is that the workers behind all of that activity is our friend Copper. And so what this picture that you've got up on the, hopefully that they can see.
I'll do it. You keep talking. I'll put it up so everyone can see it.
And I emailed you another version of it that you can put up there as well. It has the citation for the diagram.
Okay.
So what we've got is, this is the most simplistic picture I've ever seen to explain what the crisis is in our body. Again, let's go back to COVID-19. Where were all the optics? All of the optics were on the pathogen, naming the pathogen, getting people terrified of the pathogen, and 99.9% of the attention was on the coronavirus. 0.1% was talking about what can we do to strengthen our own immune system. Well, 99.9% of medicine is focused on, you have low iron, you're anemic, and you need more iron. And what we're learning through this COVID-19 experience is learn to question the system, learn to question convention, and say, is there more to the story? And what this picture represents by Dr. Jensen and his colleagues down in Chile. Chile, by the way, is a big producer of copper. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yes, they have major copper mines down in Chile. And what it's representing is there enough copper in the system to make new red blood cells? Very simple. And the way you got to do it is you've got to be able to make energy, and you make energy through mitochondria. And what's the fuel for mitochondria? Copper. If it doesn't have enough copper, yes, iron is involved in making new blood, no question about it, but there is a foreman behind this process, and it's copper. And what's important is they draw a distinction between less mitochondria, or less oxidative activity in the mitochondria, less energy producing in the mitochondria. That's on the red side. And then we have a green side where there's more activity, more mitochondrial activity. Two things I want to point out. There's a difference in the whole construct of the mitochondria when there's less copper versus more copper. What people might notice is that there are more crevices and surface area in the mitochondria that has more copper. And what does that mean? It means that it can make more energy. Every time you see a cinch point, a bend in the inside of the mitochondria, there are a whole series of complexes that are producing ATP there. What you see in the one that is red, you don't see a lot of crevices. They're called cristae. Mm-hmm. Those little angled areas are called cristae. Well, they don't have them in the mitochondria that has less copper. And why is that important? Because in order to turn, there are stem cells that become red blood cell precursors, and then they're supposed to evolve into red blood cells. And the blue cells that you see are the precursors. And when there's enough energy, the blue cells become red, and they become red blood cells. But they can only do that if they have enough energy to move from being what's called an erythroid precursor to a full-blown erythrocyte, or we call them red blood cells. If you don't have enough energy, they stay in the precursor state, and then the doctor will say, you don't have enough hemoglobin in your red blood cell, therefore you need more iron, when in fact it is copper that's missing, and it's copper missing all the time. And what I've said repeatedly is, I don't believe there is iron deficiency anemia on a planet that has 36% iron. The number one element on planet Earth is iron, and that means that the most evolved species on the planet has lost the ability to metabolize it. How did that happen? Because we're eating organic food from organic soil that doesn't have copper in it. And people People just need to know that. And that copper is your get out of jail card. When you learn that bioavailable copper is what not only makes new blood, it makes new bone, it makes all energy work, it makes every condition that you've ever heard of go away. Because what is the origin of every chronic condition? Lack of energy. The biggest issue on planet Earth with all humans is called atherosclerosis. And it takes place in two parts of our body, in our heart and in our brain. Alzheimer's is atherosclerosis of the brain. So atherosclerosis is the dominating condition on the planet, and guess what causes it? Lack of energy. It's the very first event. Why is there not enough energy? Because there's not enough copper to make the mitochondria do their job, to make the cells do their job. And it's that basic. And if people can get that concept squarely in their mindset, then they can begin to stop worrying about their health, and they can really begin to take command of their situation, get their health freedom to gain their medical independence. So that's the burr that I wanted to at least share with people and let them have a chance to explore that.
So basically, you solved healthcare again tonight, meaning that you again solved all problems of the sick care system and how everyone can get healthy, because it's you always drop a little simplistic thing like that, but in the end, that is really how the human body works. That's how the mineral balance works. That's how homeostasis works, and so many people battle so much stuff every day from quote unquote oxidative stress. But they're missing exactly what you just talked about. And honestly, that's solved. That's the work that the information that you just give there and every night that you've ever given me is something that literally, when I say this, I don't mean I want the whole thing to actually shut down, but you can essentially shut down the entire medical system overnight if you actually just added that component to everyone who walks into a hospital.
No, it's true. I mean, what I've just shared, if it was taught in two places of higher learning, in kindergarten and in doctor's school, we'd have a very different world out there. And I'm sure there's some naysayers out there and say, well, it can't be that simple. But what people need to understand is inside our long bones, our leg bones, our long arm bones, and in our hips, or something called bone marrow. And every day the bone marrow's got to make a decision. Am I going to make more blood, or am I going to make more bone? They got to make a decision. Most basic decision every day. And if there's too much iron in the bone marrow and there's not enough copper in the bone marrow, it starts to create smoke. And then you can't replace the blood, and you can't replace the bone. And for people who might be worried about osteopenia or osteoporosis, iron has a unique ability in the human body. Iron is the only metal that can cause calcium loss in the hard bone, in the hard tissue called bone, and at the exact same time, iron can cause calcium buildup in the soft tissue called our arteries. Mm-hmm. So if anyone out there that's listening has osteopenia or osteoporosis, they've got atherosclerosis. It's axiomatic. You cannot have osteopenia and not have atherosclerosis. Not my idea. There's some really sophisticated researchers that figured this out. So that a doctor beating you up about your bone matrix not being you didn't pass the bone scan, they're not thinking about the heart scan that should be done next to see where the calcium buildup is. So people just need to know there's some very fundamental seesaws in the body, but this concept of new bone, new blood, very basic to our physiology, and at the very center of it is bioavailable copper. And if bioavailable copper is in the mitochondria, it can make energy, And then you can differentiate and get the tissue that you want. Why is this important? What is a very subtle aspect to this article that I'm not even sure Dr. Jensen realized, he's just given us the absolute clue behind cancer. What is the cell activity in cancer? Proliferation.
Right.
Cells just keep making themselves again and again and again and again. There's no differentiation in cancer. Go back to the diagram. Low copper creates differentiation because there's not enough energy in the mitochondria to differentiate. This is the on-off switch for chronic disease. It's all about the modulation of bioavailable copper and its ability to regulate iron. And why is iron? We can't live without iron. Absolutely can't live without iron. We can't live without oxygen. But if you don't manage those elements, iron and oxygen together create what's called oxidative stress. Well, what does that really mean? It means that the oxygen is acting out. It means it's changing its structure. It means it's causing rust inside our body. And again, if there's a lack of copper, that's the point of origin. And so the whole goal here, I absolutely understand the movement here is let's take back our rights. Let's demand an end to this tyranny. Well, the most important tyranny that's taking place that everyone's just taking for granted is medical tyranny.
Yep.
Because they're not educating us about why is my vitamin D low? Why do I have this anemic state? Why do I have these symptoms? Don't tell me that I've got this label. Give me a clear explanation. And that's really what the root cause protocol seeks to do, is teach people that there's a very basic premise for all of this dysfunction that's taking place, not just across this country, but around this whole planet. So it's getting it down to its very essence so that people hopefully can look at that diagram and say, wow, this copper thing's pretty important. Mm-hmm. And it can run high and low. And this verbiage that copper is toxic, no. I'm not going to go into that right now, but people have got to stop thinking that.
I was almost ready to ask you that question. I will cross it off my list right now. If anybody has questions out there, by the way, I cannot put in the image that he sent me right now. I think I can put it in after we're off the live stream, so I'll attempt to do that later. If not, what I will do is get on the email list, therevolutionnetwork.com, and I will email that out probably tomorrow to everybody, so they'll get it either way, either in here tonight or in the email, and we'll get that handled. But I also want you to put in any questions. We're not going to go super late tonight because Morley and I probably both had very, very long. My week was very busy. I don't know about yours, but it is time to get a little more rest.
It was a piece of cake.
And sleep in a little. But if you have questions, please ask those. I will write down the best I can after I ask one so that we can get those over to Morley. But I want to do that first. And I was going to ask you the copper toxicity question, but then obviously.
Well, let me answer that real quick. Let me answer that for people just so they know. This whole idea of copper being toxic, no. What happened was when copper's in the blood, it's supposed to be in a protein called ceruloplasmin. And under very predictable conditions, it gets unbound. And that unbound copper is reactive, just like iron is reactive. What is not taught to anyone is that there's 60 atoms of iron for every atom of copper. So think of copper as being a Navy SEAL surrounded by 60 ninja warriors. So if you're going to have a fight, who's going to win that fight? As much as we love the Navy SEALs, I think the ninja warriors are going to win out just because of sheer numbers. Well, that's exactly what happens inside the body. And what's happened is, again, people need to understand that there is programming taking place, and we're being programmed to attack the very essence of what keeps us alive. So we are taught to attack copper. Again, copper is what allows us to metabolize oxygen. If we didn't have copper, we would not be here. It's that basic. And this goes back, billions of years. So we're very grateful for copper. But this idea that it's toxic is a misnomer. And in fact, scientists have studied it to see how many unbound atoms of copper are in a cell. And it's less than one. Less than one. So this idea that it's a bad guy is it's fear porn, if I may use that phrase.
Absolutely.
And it's designed to get people really terrified of their body. And no one ever talks about the iron side of it. And so I can assure you, I've studied it very carefully. Iron is the bad guy. We can't live without it, but it is managed and regulated by copper when it's properly complexed in its proteins. So.
Got it. I'm gonna give you rapid fire questions, meaning we're gonna give it and you're gonna give me an answer back so I can get as many in as I possibly can. Not because we don't love you speaking long, but we're gonna get them in fast. All these copper bracelets and copper mugs and all this different stuff, do they even work?
The copper bracelets certainly are of benefit. If someone has some kind of arthritic joint, there is copper being passed into the skin. It's not. I don't think it has the same metabolic effect as it would if it was inside your body. The copper cups and copper pitchers and things like that. Again, we're taking things out of cultural context. We're taking things that were done in India and imported here, where we have sanitized water. They don't have as much sanitized water in India. So it's different principles. So we have to be very careful about that. The whole goal, and there have been a number of articles published during COVID-19 about how the role that copper plays to kill pathogens. Yeah, it's true. But we're supposed to have the copper inside our body.
Right.
We're supposed to have copper surfaces inside our body to do the exact same thing. And that's really the missing piece of the puzzle.
Good, that makes sense. How much copper per day should someone be getting?
The RDA is probably around 2 to 3 milligrams.
Okay.
The max that I've seen is as much as 10 milligrams. It's not easy to get 2 or 3 milligrams, though, in the standard American diet.
Totally understand.
You got to be really aggressive about it.
What would you say for a B1 or just... The question was B1 deficiency, but I would say B complex because, quite honestly, there's so many B vitamins, they're still finding them. But just quickly on B1 deficiency or B deficiency in general.
Well, the challenge we've got is that we've been exposed to a lot of synthetic Bs, right, as you know. Mm-hmm. They're made from coal tar derivatives. They know what they claim. There's 10,000 elements in coal tar derivatives. They've named 5,000 of them. What do they do with those other 5,000? I find that fascinating. But the thing is, B vitamins are very important. I personally think B vitamins have a working relationship with both copper and iron. Copper runs the B vitamins to manage iron. Don't run to Google to try to say, is he right about that? That's just years and years of reflection on it. But B1 in particular plays an important role in helping to keep the iron moving within the cell and get it out of the cell. And when we get synthetic B1, that whole recycling process gets messed up. So I am totally in agreement with you about the need for the family. And the best source of B vitamins is from beef liver. And then another good source would be rice bran, would be a very good source of B vitamins if people are looking for natural food-based sources.
Nice, and we have a couple good B vitamins as well. So yeah, anything like that is a good source, whole food source. The next one is going to be a hard one to keep in a summary, but do your best. The reason why it's because I battle this one weekly in my practice. People having completely myths about it and complete just false information is methylation problems and genetic methylation problems. Fire away.
How much time do we have?
Fire away, because I deal with this one all the time and I have to dispel so many myths about it.
Okay, so yes, methylation is very important. The methylation pathway starts with methionine synthase. It is, for a fact, copper dependent. That's the very first step. The second step, I believe, is, and I always forget the initials, I think it's SAS or something like that. That too is copper dependent. Well, then I stumbled on the fact that this term methyltransferase enzymes are used. That's what actually that's the methylation process, is using what are called methyltransferase enzymes. One of them is POMT, another is PEMT, there's HNMT. There's some very important enzymes that rely on this methylation process. Well, I started to study them, and it turns out that the 10 that I studied very carefully all had a dependence on copper. And so if there's 200 enzymes that all have the same family, I don't think Mother Nature plays dice. We're not going to do 10 one way and 190 another way. Or we're not going to do 15 with zinc and 12 with molybdenum. And but the body doesn't work that way. And the whole methylation process is dependent on copper. And when you really get into the whole dynamics, what's another key component of methylation? Oh yeah, folate. Very important. So a very important conversation I had with Leslie Clavet, who's a world-renowned copper expert. I was asking him about my theory of copper running the B vitamins, and he said, well, I can't speak for all of the B vitamins. He said, but what I can say for a fact is that B9, folate, has an absolute dependency on copper. Well, that changes the whole narrative about methylation. That changes the whole narrative about how blood gets made, because B9 and B12 are very important there. And then we talk about B12 deficiency. Oh, I've got a B12 deficiency. Well, look up the symptoms of B12 deficiency and look up the symptoms of copper deficiency. They're identical. Turns out, and there's something called myeloplastic syndrome, myelodysplasia syndrome, excuse me. It's from B12, right? Mm-hmm. No, it's from a copper deficiency. And that's very well established in the literature. And so what people need to understand is this issue around copper, it is explosive because it blows the narrative of conventional medicine. It's like finding out that, oh yeah, the FBI lied about Flynn. When you understand what copper does in the body, and the doctors aren't talking about it, it's just like the FBI lying to you. And the fact that doctors don't know about copper. Let me give you orders of magnitude of what this means. A doctor not knowing about what copper's role in the body is like a lawyer not understanding what contracts are. It's like a politician not understanding what the Constitution is. And it's like a priest not understanding what the Christ consciousness is. That's a doctor not understanding copper. It is so basic to human physiology, it's frightening. But it's been swept aside, buried, kept out of the narrative. And it isn't. It's medicine. Conventional medicine is all narrative. The Merck Manual, that's a story. It's just a story with a bunch of labels in it, and it's a very powerful and very profitable story, but it's all science fiction. It's not fact. And what have we learned from Daniel Erickson out on the West Coast? Facts matter. And that's what this whole discussion is about, is that copper is one of the premier regulatory minerals in our body because of its elegance to regulate and harness oxygen and its ability to regulate and harness iron. And I think more people need to know about that. And I'm very grateful to have these conversations with you, to dance on minds, to let them know, wow, I didn't know that. So I think methylation is a very popular, it's very vogue, it's very contemporary, but it's a bunch of garbage because they're not talking about how methylation really works or why it doesn't work. because of missing minerals.
You're quite the wordsmith tonight, sir. You just said dance on minds, which was absolutely eloquent. And that might have been one of your best rants that I've heard you go on in a long time, to the point where I just made a mental note to myself. And I love doing these live like this because I can have these little epiphanies, and it's fun to drop on everybody while they're listening. But I'm going to actually edit that one later, and I'm going to use that for some sort of promo or something, because that was so well said. And for anybody out there who's watching tonight on a Friday night, as you're all coming in, is if you didn't know, one of the reasons why I'm so close with Morley behind the scenes is he just dropped the whole Flynn thing on you. Morley is very in the know on what is going on in the world today, the Q phenomenon, the Trump stuff, the deep state, the cabal. He knows about it. So we talk on this thing. He knows about the Federal Reserve, the whole thing. So I just thought it was hilarious that he actually dropped that, and it was a fantastic little line tonight. So
let me build on that.
Yeah.
So we now know that in order to destroy an economy, take gold out of the system, right?
Right.
And the economy is going to collapse. Well, the people behind that are the same people behind medical education. And trust me, they know that when you take copper out of the human body, it collapses the same way the Fed's going to collapse. So it's really basic. That's the beauty of it, is they've taken these very simple concepts that are profoundly important, but there's all sorts of secrecy and shrouding and mystery. But when you blow away all the smoke, you say, wait a minute, we're missing a couple really important minerals, especially magnesium and copper, and we're being drowned with iron. Well, that's what the problem is, and it's fascinating when you begin to see the truth of it. Absolutely. Whether we're talking about the economy, or we're talking about the legal system, or the political system, or we're talking about the nutritional and medical system, it's the same mechanisms of deceit drive all of those systems. So but the average person doesn't know that.
I have to drop a little factoid on you now, and drop this. I just got this little factoid probably about 10 minutes or so before we came on tonight, and this is the first time I'm telling them as well. Is this kind of blew my mind, but it doesn't shock me, because we were talking about universities and education, et cetera, and all this different stuff. So it always says symbolism will be their downfall. Their own symbolism will be their downfall, right? So yeah. I stumbled upon this tonight, which, again, blew my mind. When you graduate from a university, or even a high school, but a university specifically, and when you wear the black robe and the black hat with the square on it, do you know that that's actually symbolism? Do you know what it is?
I did it one time. I can't wait to be remembered.
So for a lot of people out there who don't know that, again, I'm dropping this like the first time, and I have to go through it a little bit more on my own on the side, because it's kind of like, oh my gosh, like so blatantly obvious that we didn't know, is the little square on the black square on the top of the university or graduating little hat, whatever they call it. So this dark, deep state that is running the university and education system, they actually worship supposedly Satan, but it actually it's Saturn. Saturn is the planet. Right. So yeah. Saturn is a planet they worship, which supposedly is the whole satanic thing. I'm not going to go into that tonight, but one of the symbols for that is a black cube. Well, guess what the little square on top of your little graduation hat is? It's the black cube that is for their educational system that they completely own, because they own the minds of all of our children. So that's why you wear the stupid little graduation hat down the middle, because the black square on top is actually a black cube, which represents Saturn or the satanic cult. How about that?
Unbelievable.
It's all right in front of our face. So I have a couple more questions before we go, okay?
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
A couple more questions, and then we'll end on a fun one. So I've had this person, I don't know who they are, so I don't want to call them out, because they actually asked a legitimate question, and I'm not really sure what the answer to is, because I haven't looked it up. But you might know is I forgot my cough drops tonight. A genetic disposition to red meat or meat in general. Have you heard anything about this as it relates to maybe copper?
I know that people do have a difficulty breaking down meat. I've always thought it was, or understood it to be, digestive enzymes that were missing, as opposed to some genetic defect. My first go-to would be, there may be a genetic component, but what people need to understand is that genetics are ruled by epigenetics,
right?
The environment. Well, and again, we're back to particle and field. We're back to Pasteur and Béchamp. So the particle is the broken gene. The field, it's the energy. It's the ability of that person's physiology to produce the energy that's needed to get all of the systems to work right. And so I would argue that there isn't enough energy, so therefore there's not enough copper. What's also important to understand is that copper isn't just found in the mitochondria. It's found in some very important other organelles inside the cell, not the least of which is the nucleus.
Right.
So there's some very important electronic communication that's taking place in the nucleus, and I have seen articles that talk about the lack of copper in the nucleus, implicating that that's contributing to these defects. Again, I would argue that it's also ties to the mitochondrial breakdown. It's just not producing enough energy. And what's important is that the mitochondria are communicating. They have close connections to what's called the endoplasmic reticulum, which is where the proteins are being made. And it also has a close communication with what's called the lysosome, which is where that's the stomach of the cell that's breaking stuff down. If a protein's not working right, it goes into the lysosome to get chewed up. Guess who's running those enzymes? It's copper. So we've got copper running the lysosome, running the mitochondria, involved in the nucleus, and if there isn't enough energy, the endoplasmic reticulum spills its guts, and that's called calcium. So I think that copper's role in maintaining cellular homeostasis is far greater than we realize. This issue about inability to break down meat protein, I've only had an experience with it with 2 different clients, and quite frankly, I haven't studied it enough to be able to speak with certainty. But I would guess that there's clearly enzyme dysfunction. And so then we've got the pancreas not being energized properly, because the origin of diabetes is they're called acinar cells. That's what runs the pancreas. Well, the acinar cells aren't making enough energy. And if they can't make energy, they can't secrete the digestive enzymes. So we're back to this copper thing again. That's the real downfall in diabetes, and it starts years and years before it becomes insulin resistance in the liver and the muscles. So
it makes sense. This is my last question for you tonight, and as always, my most difficult question for you tonight. Okay, I'm going to challenge you really bad. I'm going to challenge you big here. Okay.
Okay. Can't wait.
Everyone wants to know, what is Morley's diet like?
Everyone.
I totally generalize that. Every single person watching tonight wants to know your diet. I get that question off and on, and I know I've asked you before, but there's a lot of new people, so they are curious. So that's your final question tonight.
Okay. Snickers bars and
diet sodas.
Yeah, right. Diet soda. Absolutely. It's actually a pretty simple diet. Dr. Liz and I, we only eat 2 meals a day.
Yep.
We have breakfast and an early dinner around 5 usually, but breakfast is pretty consistent. It's 2 farm fresh eggs. It's bacon or ham, where we mix it up a little bit, and we might have omelets and things like that. But where we mix it up is we will vary whether it's oatmeal or grits or whole wheat bread, but there's always it's smothered in butter. Whatever we're eating beyond the bacon and eggs, and we don't drink orange juice. We do have adrenal cocktails, as you might expect. We have coffee. We love coffee. And so we're not goofy about it, but we do enjoy we probably have 2 cups of coffee a day. And no meal until we have dinner. I might snack on some nuts, but nothing egregious. Dinner is going to be some kind of meat or fish, a salad, some kind of carbohydrate, some kind of green. I mean, it's a pretty basic diet. And Dr. Liz is a really accomplished chef. I mean, she can turn a salad into a beautiful meal. I, on the other hand, would take us out to a meal. But
same here.
No, it's the greens are mustard greens, collard greens, carrot greens. We've had. I mean, I'm blanking on obviously green beans, Brussels sprouts. Love Brussels sprouts, asparagus. And then the meats could range anywhere from, like I said, fish, shrimp, oysters to venison, lamb, a lot of lamb,
nice,
and a lot of beef dishes. And we have, if we're going to have a carbohydrate, we're going to have sweet potatoes, or we're going to have turnips. Love turnips, love whipped turnips. If you've never had whipped turnips, it tastes like potatoes, but a lot better for you. And then I always have my treat at night is a square of chocolate, and we don't deviate from that too much. I mean, it's if we're going to go out and cheat, and we might do this like once a month, we'll go to like Chick-fil-A, and we'll get some chicken fingers and get some iced tea. I mean, we're pretty simple, and it's funny. People, this question has come up before, but I think people kind of marvel at that. And even when we go out, we have a pretty simple. There's just a few restaurants that we go to that we really trust the quality of the food. But again, it's going to be the same basic variety, and we've been eating this way for probably 8 or 9 years now. And I think the fact that we only have 2 meals has really simplified our lives, and we really don't need that much calories. I think people, we've been trained again in this country to think that we've got to be grazing all the time, that we're ruminants. And the body really works better when the liver has blocks of time, when it can clean out what's going on. And especially overnight, it's a critical time for the body to go through its cleansing process, especially the liver. And if you're waking up around 3 o'clock, your liver is looking for energy because it's trying to do its work, and that's really what's waking you up. It's a histamine reaction. The liver is saying, "Feed me," and so we tell people to have a snack before you go to bed if that happens, and then over time it doesn't happen as they get as the housekeeping gets better and better in their system.
It's funny you said something, and it's so funny. I think the big thing is I think so many people are trying to be so perfect, and so they get caught up in this whole complex thing of, oh my gosh, what do we eat? It must be so perfect. It must be so this. And honestly, it's very simplistic. I mean, people ask me all the time, and I'm like, it's really simple. Like, there's a time where I intermittent fast from like at night until usually the next day. I do a lunch necessarily, not a breakfast. On the weekends, I'll do a breakfast a lot because I wake up, I'm a little hungry, and plus I'm just hanging around. It's something I do, whatever. But it's simple, and on top of that, you're not doing it all the time, meaning you're not going to be perfect. And everyone, I think, thinks they need to be perfect, and you don't necessarily have to be perfect. If you're doing the right things 95% of the time, your body will regulate itself. And on top of that, it's funny you brought up the Chick-fil-A thing, because that's so popular down here, and people are shocked. If you're eating really well all the time, you can get away with, and I actually think sometimes, I have a personal opinion on this and a viewpoint is, I think challenging the system once a month, and now this doesn't mean a week long of eating junk food and fast food. I'm not talking about a week long doing it every day. I'm talking about going and having a slice of pizza, or going and have Chick-fil-A one time, one meal. I'm not talking about like a slew of it. I'm talking about one meal. Your body actually expects to be challenged a little bit, and so I've never found anything wrong with that. And honestly, at the end of the day, like, I do like to enjoy life a little bit. So like, I can be on a carnivore diet, hardcore, which I usually am more carnivore and keto. But I will tell you, sometimes if I'm on the road, I will have a slice of pizza somewhere, and you know what? I don't get sick. I'm not dying. It's living life, but also knowing that I and yourself eat so good most of the time that you can get away with that. Now, if your whole diet is made of 75-90% of a standard American diet of pizza and Chick-fil-A, you're going to have a lot of problems.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think we are human, and I think we do need to be able to step off the reservation. But like you said, when we're doing it 90-95% of the time, and the thing is, what we're really consistent about is the food we buy is really good food.
Right.
It's the best that we can find. We're at the farmers markets getting the best food we can afford, and we're shopping the perimeter of the supermarket. We're staying away from the aisles. So it's just, and the restaurants we go to, they're very few, but we're really pristine about what we get there. And I think people need to, if you have that consistency, I think you can have these momentary off the reservation meals, and there is no issue. Your body does know how to handle that. And I think it also takes some of the stress off this idea that I've got to be perfect. No, you don't have to be perfect. Do the best that you can. Be very selective about what you eat, and try to have variety. Try to eat in season. Try to eat real food. That's very important. And just make sure that there's plenty of fat in it. That's where I think people have been maligned the most by the system, is they think that fat is really bad for them. And we won't go into it tonight, but maybe one night we can talk about the bilipid membrane.
Yes.
That's around every cell, around every organelle of every cell, around every mitochondria. And why that's important? Because that bilipid membrane, that's where the charge is held. That's what holds on to the energy. It's like, and so if you don't have fat in your diet, you're going to have trouble making energy, but also retaining energy and storing it.
Your house is probably like ours, where we buy stock in butter, coconut oil, and olive oil. It's always plentiful. Absolutely. Sir, I appreciate having you on this lovely Friday night, and you are always a wealth of knowledge, and I know everyone here is appreciating it. So you are gathering quite the crowd on these evenings, and they are becoming junkies for your information. So well done.
Well, that's good. That's great. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm really happy to have this time together. And this format works great. Later in the evening, and then open it up to questions. I'm sure people have way more questions than we got into.
Oh yeah.
So we can just do a Q&A session from time to time as well. So
I love it.
Be happy to field those inquiries.
Beautiful. If anybody does have questions, you can both get a hold of Morley or myself. As you know, my email address is gethealthy@drjasondean.com. If you need to get a hold of Morley, he is available also on his different channels, but you can also email me. If you have a question on him, I can forward it over to him. It's not a big deal. We appreciate helping as many people as humanly possible. We both help patients every single day, and we will be happy to help you as well. So do me a favor. Go like and subscribe all of his pages. Next time, we're going to probably talk a little bit about the magnesium advocacy group, because I'd like him to talk on that at length as well. But do me a favor, share this virally, because we are in an age of awakening, not just on a political system and a planetary system, but I love Morley because Morley brings you a planetary awakening on a healthcare model and a real healthcare model. And so it's so important to spread this. We are streaming to my Facebook page, my network Facebook page, Twitter, Periscope, as well as YouTube. So this goes out to the biosphere of social media, which is so important. But please go like his pages and let us know if you have any questions. Morley, have a wonderful night. I will talk to you soon. You message me anything you want, anytime. Obviously, we do anyway. But thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity, and I wish everyone a good evening and a good weekend, and look forward to catching up next week.
Beautiful. Have a wonderful night, everybody. This is Dr. Jason Dean for Revolution Network signing off with Morley Robbins. Have a wonderful Friday night and Saturday, and go out there, enjoy some sunshine, and spend some good time with your family. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.